Do you love dragons? Cause you best believe that dragons love you. And by that I mean they wish to make your life worse, simply by existing in your general area. Thankfully, the hard-working officials of Yan are here to keep things stable, if not safe. Which leads us to today's star, Lazy, who is taking her first steps as the protagonist of an event following some Yuri shenanigans in such as the Jai of our reunion. Although Yuri is not on the cards for this event, we can at least enjoy some Chinese New Year event shenanigans on the lead up to Christmas, as Fantasy in the Mirage lays the groundworks for the next expansion of integrated strategies. And I would like to apologize now because my recording software has been giving me a world of issues and lagging my microphone's recordings out, which has been pissing me off to no end. So if there is a bit of audio issues, hopefully I'll have it resolved for the next video. Regardless, let us get started with the lore as we always do, which today we shall title Why Blaming Sui is Always a Pretty Good Idea. Mangshan is a peaceful town in the country of Yan. Located close to the capital city of Baizhou, it is of very little note. Only 500 families call this town their home, which might be quite large by real-world standards, but from the sounds of things, it is primarily the elderly that remain. With Yan's capital city so close by, the young have made their way there as the city continues to be expanded. Thanks to a Tianxi Bureau branch being located close to the town, it has managed to survive despite its dwindling population. This has not protected it from being forgotten by wider Yan, however, as it rarely if ever appears on any map or report outside of that local branch. Probably cause the town's a little bit fucked. Is it filled with those who abuse their power? No. Is it filled with dangerous individuals? Well, the answer depends on if you consider them people, but I do, so this is a yes. And you'll never guess the cause of these problems. It's all Sui's fault. It's always Sui's fault in Not China. You will never escape the dragon siblings. When Sui last awoke a century prior, the after effects of its power created the environment for geists to manifest. Since then, a pretty large portion of Mangshan's population is made up of said geists. Geists are human-like spirits born from people's obsessions over mundane objects, like teapots, weapons, or bottles. Poor man's Gachiakuda. Rio, best girl by the way. Geists can be killed if the object they are born from is destroyed, but why would that ever happen? Surely this town is peaceful and full of loving individuals. Regardless, one of the Sui siblings, Yi Arknights, which is spelled like the Yi Arknights you're thinking of, not really but it is in my script, would come to the land to protect it following the awakening of Sui. The Tianxi Bureau used to send Tianxis to handle the Geist situation, but following a fomentologist setting up shop there, the situation has calmed down massively, although the underlying Sui problem has never been resolved. Which leads me on to the Garden of Grotesqueries. While I can't say much about it yet, it is a garden cultivated by the Sui sibling Yi, the 8th fragment of Sui. Following the disaster that befell Mangshan during the awakening of Sui a century ago, it was Yi who stepped up to purify the area of Geist corruption. He intended to take those of interest into his garden and purge those that remained. He left a proxy of his, Liang, in charge of this, who performed his job well. And by well, I mean Liang discovered the Geist's connection to their former home and decided rebuilding Mangshan would be a better use of his time. This would allow both humans and Geists to coexist, as well as create a buffer between the garden and any unwanted guests. We ultimately don't learn much about the garden aside from Yi's desire to fill it with objects that he deems treasures, and spoiler alert, if you have no idea what Integrated Strategy 6 is called, we will be spending our time there in Sui's Garden of Grotesqueries. That is a story for another time. For now, it's time to discuss Lazy Altar shenanigans. But first, introductions are in order. The characters of this event are primarily returning characters from other Sui sibling stories, and aside from 2 of them, I doubt we will be seeing much of these new introductions again. Lazy potentially requires no introduction if you have read such as the Jai of Our Reunion. If you haven't, I am actively transmitting signals into your brain as a way of shilling old content, and you should go watch my video on it. Or better yet, read the event. If you don't know who Lazy is, she is a former member of the Tianxi Bureau who left the organization following her disagreements with her operating principles during the events of such as the Jai of Our Reunion. Yon Qingling is the record keeper of Yumen's Grandmaster Chong Yue. He's been helping Chong Yue by recording Kung Fu for him since he was rescued by Chong Yue as a child. Since Chongyue has deported Yumen, he is more free to pursue his own interests, but they still typically revolve around dealing with the Sui in some form or another. Zhuo is a member of the Sui regulators, involving himself in all matters that concern the siblings. Primarily though, he is not involved in this event, aside from sending Lazy off on her mission. Mo Yi is a member of the Shanghai Zong. While not directly affiliated with those of the Shanghai Zong that attacked Yumen during the events of Chongyue's event, she is technically still a member of the same group. She is in fact a descendant of one of the group's founders, and is incredibly knowledgeable on Pheromones, even more so than the Sui regulators. Huai Tianpei is a kung fu master and the first under heaven following his battle with Chongyue. Gone a little crazy since Ji absconded with the sword Chongyue left him with, and his desire to face the Grand Master again brings him to Mangshan. Waifu is also here, and she is still just looking for her deadbeat father. Proud father of 3 adopted children, including Waifu, Lee Arknights is also here, helping Waifu find the worst father, because she already has a better father in the form of Lee himself. Also, as I mentioned before, we get to meet the Yi Arknights. Unfortunately, this Yi is only interested in cultivating his garden and not cultivating a YouTube channel. So, having completed our discussion on the lore and introducing some of the pivotal characters in this event, I do believe it is time for some Lazy shenanigans in earnest this time. Lazy has made her way into the mountains by Baizo, searching for Record Keeper. Yes, I am using his codename so I don't have to pronounce a Chinese name. You do not have to ask for why this is the case. Zhuo had politely asked his auntie to do it for him. He even invited her to dinner with his family as a reward. That's a good deal, especially considering his mother is a MILF. Also, might I add now that Lazy is aging well. Lazy might no longer be a member of the Tianchi Bureau, but she still is a highly qualified individual, and searching for a missing person shouldn't be that big of a deal. She finds herself in Mangshan, and is shocked to find that it's inhabited. No record of the town exists on the map she has. Meeting with a strange local who hands her an oven-baked pancake that he was carrying in his pocket sets her even more on edge. While distracted by that, she runs into a strange girl. She is in the process of counting to 9,000, and as that is the final number she says, we cannot say it is over 9,000. We can however say the manga accurate over 8,000. Helping the woman off the ground, Lazy finds yet another of the town's citizens strange. The girl is in the process of delivering a letter and can only do so once he counts to 9,000. She dropped the letter and Lazy handed it back to her. Unfortunately, she heads off after dropping the letter again, and Lazy reads the outside of it. Classified scoop, not for prying eyes. Worried about the girl, she chases after her. The girl was delivering the letter to Hu Jun, who is not pleased that she lost the letter. As such, he silences the poor girl. Lazy arrives shortly after, but only finds the umbrella the girl was carrying. As such, she heads to the place mentioned in the letter, a local tea house. Within the modest tea house, 2 nice men, who are certainly not bandits, enter the establishment, surely to request some tea and provide good business. Unfortunately, I lied about some things in the last sentence, and the men begin threatening the server immediately. They are not seeking tea, but someone who has something of theirs. As such, they threaten the man into complying. Fortunately, they don't need to wait long for the woman they are looking for to appear before them. Once Mo Yi enters, the Liu brothers immediately set upon her and force her to the table. At least they finally order some tea too. A few days ago, the woman had snitched on them to a human garrison in Baizhou, framing them for stealing the Grandmaster's secret tome. As such, the 3 Liu brothers became 2 Liu brothers. Refusing to cut their losses, they tracked her to the Mangshan town. They demand that she hands over the scroll, and in exchange they will let her live. Probably. They won't have time to go through with that threat, as Hu Jun, the owner of the establishment and the server they just threatened, had poisoned the tea and subdues all 3 of them. Hu plans on killing the trio and taking the scroll for himself. His plans are halted though, as Record Keeper has been relaxing in the tea house this whole time. Although he promises not to do anything, Hu ties him up anyway. Planning to get rid of all the witnesses, he is once again interrupted by a knock on the door. Lazy enters the tea house and speaks to Hu about the town. Not one for playing games, Lazy jumps straight to the point and confronts Hu over the contents of the letter, a secret meeting in this very tea house. Who flees upstairs and cries from Record Keeper keeps Lazy from pursuing him. Upstairs is no respite though, as a swordswoman awaits Who. She too is searching for the secret tome and strikes down Who, hoping that he has it. Lazy frees Record Keeper and finds that Mo Yi has escaped. No time to worry about that though, as they hear a crash upstairs caused by the fighting. Lazy rushes outside and sees Who crash through the window and fall to his death, shattering into teapot shards before her very eyes. Following the death of Who, a panicked student rushes to meet the local teacher, Pooh. The student informs the man of Who's death and the Tianqi that is on our way to question him after picking up Who's corpse. Who takes the time to correct his student and tells him not to refer to Who's remains as a corpse before sending him away so that he may meet with the Tianqi. He also reminds his student not to jump to conclusions when he claims without evidence that the swordswoman killed Who. The student is correct, but he has no proof besides his own prejudices. Lazy enters the classroom and begins discussing the day events with the teacher. Who plays it cool and pretends not to know anything, and finds it incredible that someone could become a teapot after dying. He politely asks to see Who's remains, and Lazy places the bag containing the shards on the table between them. Before he can reach for the bag, Lazy stops him and questions him about the state of the town. As a humble teacher, he fails to offer her much insight. Suddenly, a candlestick falls over, almost splashing candle wax on Lazy. She reacts immediately and avoids it, but almost trips on a chair that doesn't seem to move properly. In that moment, Who swaps out the remains of Who with a bag of pebbles. Lazy tries to question him on his relationship with Who, but the teacher stonewalls her. After Lazy leaves, Who checks on Who's remains, but only finds a bag of pebbles waiting for him. Lazy, after all, was not born yesterday. Refusing to give up, Who and his students follow the Tianqi. On our walk through the city, Lazy notices the not-so-subtle signs of being followed. The only interesting thing about it being that mundane objects are the ones following her. A broom, a shoe, and a medicine bottle, to name a few of the things, at the rear of this strange group, Pooh. So, Lazy pulls a Batman by walking around the corner and disappearing. Our followers are left shocked by this, and in that moment, the swordswoman strikes. Taking Pooh to a rundown building, she questions him on the secret tome. She wants to learn the secret of personification, so that she may leave the mountain, as all geists are trapped on Mount Mangshan. Unfortunately, Pooh has no answers for her, so she attempts to kill him. Thankfully, Lazy is here at the last second to save him and runs the woman off. The broom led her to this place, so the whole following Lazy thing wasn't a complete waste of time. Following his rescue, Pooh reveals the secrets of Mangshan to Lazy, how Sui's influence spread the geists, and how a former Sui regulator, himself, came to call Mangshan his home. Here he is taught the geists to understand humans, to mixed results. As such, he stores all the dead geists in his classroom so that he may repair their broken forms and hopefully life may return to them once more. As such, Lazy returns the teapot to him. Pooh also speculates that someone has spread word of the Grandmaster's tome, as it is believed they know how to manifest a human body. Something all the geists want. Not to mention, it is a tome of supposedly arcane martial arts mastery. So that's another reason people are looking for it. Lazy's next adventure within the town leads her to her family attempting to find an old man's precious lost object. Once, as we all were, he was young and found a nice looking rock in the river. By chance, Yi stumbled upon the boy as he held it in his hand. Yi offered to buy the rock from him, but Wen refused. The rock is pretty neat, and he won't part with it for anything that Yi could offer him. Regardless, Yi says that he will continue to make offers to him, as he would very much like that rock for his garden. Pouring his love into his treasure for the next few decades, Wan never faltered in his affection. Yi would appear before him many times since then, be it at the completion of his home, or when thieves stole everything from him. Yi was there to offer the boy that stone from him, come hell or high water. Wan would always refuse to part with the stone, however. Although after the robbery, he was in need of funding to rebuild his home, and he offered to use the stone as collateral to borrow money from Yi. Yi agreed and gave the man golden feathers to rebuild his life. However, in what must have been a break-in, the stone has gone missing. Wan is old and bedbound now, and desires to have his treasure ready to repay his debts. As such, his 3 children have asked Lazy for help finding it. While the old man is unhelpful when questioned, the butler guides Lazy to the site of the break-in. The only thing displaced is the broken ornate box which held the stone. All the ledgers remain safe. Suspicious. Without any suspects, she turns her attention to the most likely candidates, Wan's children. None are particularly close to their father, all caught up in their own lives. Although, when told that a buyer had shown interest in the rock for decades, Lazy heads to where Wan found the stone as a buy. Don't want to go back to this point again, but the middle brother did it. He wanted to try and get all the property deeds, but found a stone in the box instead of something useful. The river has dried up since, and nothing of interest remains. However, 2 children are seemingly playing a game nearby, and Lazy observes them. They speak of a garden of grotesqueries, and how the girl will be much happier there than here. Although, the girl is hesitant to leave. She is happy where she was from. A kind man always treasured her, the man's treasure having become a geist. The stone is displeased with how the man lived his life, however, always working and never resting. Lazy reveals herself to the 2, and they transform back into their mundane forms in an attempt to hide from her, allowing Lazy to easily recover the stone. With the stone in hand once more, does Yi return to Wan's side? Yi has no interest in the stone anymore. Perhaps he never did have any to begin with. He is here to say goodbye to an old friend. He knew from the moment that Wan picked the stone up that he would never part from it. Even still, he wanted it for his garden, but could not bring himself to steal away someone's treasure. Wan is finally able to put the stone down at the end. A life well lived, and a treasure most treasured. A very endearing story, but mostly unimportant segment of this event's overall story. Doesn't advance the plot, but it does give us a nice insight into Yi's character, so I didn't want to cut it out wholesale. Atop Mangshan Mountain, a young man, Lan Kei, ponders his next Wei Chi move. This has been going on for a while, and the young boy across from him, Luo, questions why he is so insistent on pondering this move. Lan informs him that should he win the game, he will be granted any wish he desires. Luo leaves him to ponder, and Lan almost makes his move, but stops himself short. Another dead end. Record Keeper arrives at the base of the mountain, having been invited to meet someone at its peak. On the way up the mountain, he meets a young woman by the name of Bai Jin. She's looking for her husband, and gives an exact description of Lan. Although Record Keeper cannot help her directly, Bai Jin offers to accompany him up the mountain, as it is the last place that she has left to search for her husband. A Luo that is much closer in age to Lan speaks to the Wei Chi player again. Lan's game is stuck in a stalemate, and he should concede. As his wish can only be granted if he wins, this is an unacceptable result. Having made their way most of the way up the mountain, Bai Jin tells Record Keeper about Lan Kei, a studious man who would no doubt become a Wei Chi Grandmaster. She is sure that he is studying the game, even now. Continuing on their journey, Record Keeper enters a pavilion where he sees Lan and a now old man Luo. Seemingly having lost Bai Jin, Record Keeper approaches the board to see what the game state is. Focusing on the stalemate is a mistake, and using the lessons bestowed on him by Chang Yue, Record Keeper breaks the stalemate by placing a piece on an empty corner of the board. Although his body was too frail to learn Kung Fu, his mind absorbed the teachings on strategy and tactics. Having successfully beaten the game, Bai Jin appears before Lan Kei, although it is not a true reunion. When Sui awoke, Bai Jin was killed by the monsters that destroyed the town, and Lan Kei, in his grief, was offered a false salvation by the man who laid out the board, Wang, the second brother. Regardless, the Baijin standing before Lan Kei is a geist of the funeral papers he laid at his wife's grave. Having met the shadow of his wife, Lan Kei passes on happily, with the geist of Baijin passing on as well, as the obsession that fueled her was gone. Following the reunion of two lovers, Record Keeper is approached by a proxy of Yi, Liang. Liang tells him that Wang expected that a student of Chong Yue's would be the one that overcame the stalemate using the exact move he did. Although Weiqi is not why Liang invited Record Keeper here. Someone wants to meet with him. Mo Yi. But before we get to the conclusion of that little plot point, we got a sword to kill. Although Lizzie isn't the only person searching for her. Within a tea house, an old swordsman, Zheng Zhao, awaits his meeting with the woman. For the last 7 years, they have met in this spot. And no, they don't give us a design for him for some reason, so I am using my husband, my goat, Teresis, as a stand-in. In their first meeting, she wanted him to train her. However, Zheng had lost his sword and used that as an excuse to leave the life of a swordsman behind him. A convenient excuse, especially considering that he had only lost his sword the previous night. It simply disappeared. Regardless, the woman doesn't give up and asks him to meet her again next year should he change his mind. And so began their yearly tradition of meeting up, each year becoming closer and closer. He even gives the woman his old title as a name, the Delivering Blade, which I am sure gives you all the clues you need to figure out what the Geist's identity is. And with some help from the locals, Zheng figures it out as well. Just in time too, as Lizzie is currently putting bell to ass on Delivering Blade. Zheng attempts to protect his sword from Lizzie, but the Tianqi has no time for his antics. Geists cannot leave this town, and Lazy refuses to allow one that has committed murder multiple times to roam free. The only end for a sword without a sheath is to shatter, and so Lazy unleashes her lightning upon Delivering Blade, leaving nothing but the tome of the Grandmaster behind her. Although Huai snatches it right after, with Lazy chasing after him. Zheng, meanwhile having lost his sword for a second time, leaves Mangshan. Although on his way out, he discovers a young woman. Delivering Blade, through some form of Lizzie's arts, has had the Geist part of her removed, although she lacks any of her memories. Who knows just how long she can live in such a state, but it matters not to Zheng, who finally takes a sword with him to experience all that Yan can offer. And before I move on, we must ask the real question. Is Zheng going to fuck his sword? I don't have an answer for you, but I have asked the question regardless. And with all that wrapped up, I think it's time we finally reach the climax of this series of disjointed events. So what set everything in motion? Well, Huai attacked the garrison in Newman and stole Chongye's secret tome. He did this because Mo Yi, as a member of the Sangsai Hong, promised to set up a fight between him and Chong Yue. Since losing the sword Chong Yue gave him, he's become completely obsessed with fighting the Grandmaster again. Waifu and Li are following his trail, which leads them to Mangshan. Here, they meet up with Lazy and ascend the mountain, hoping that by finding the tome, said to be at the peak, they will find Huai. At the peak, Record Keeper discusses the secret tome with Mo Yi, confirming it to be an authentic creation that was dictated to him by Chong Yue. After confirming it is legitimate, Mo Yi asks Liang if Yi is interested in adding it to his garden. Liang tells her that they will ask Yi, but promises nothing. In the meantime, wandering martial artists and geists have come before them in an effort to grasp the secrets of the Grandmaster. When Mo Yi attempts to incite the crowd, Record Keeper steps in, informing everyone present that there is nothing special about the book, save that it was a gift. In fact, he shows off a copy of his own. Chong Yue had made the book so that his teachings could be spread to those beyond himself. Mo Yi isn't a fan of having her plan ruined by Record Keeper and attempts to attack him, although is stopped by doing so by Lazy. She really is making it a habit to show up at the last minute to save people this event. Recognizing she is outmatched, She uses a technique of the Shanghai Song to summon a manifestation of Shu, the first brother. With Lazy's lightning proving useless, it is up to Huai to put a stop to this imitation. Once more, does Record Keeper record the battle of Kung Fu Masters, with neither side giving ground, clashing again and again. Huai continues to advance regardless. Only when his daughter calls out to him does he pause his assault. But even that does not stop him, and he strikes down the shadow of the Grandmaster, plummeting off the side of the cliff as he does so. Following the conclusion of the battle, Zhuo Lei appears with a battalion of human soldiers. He sends some to look for Huai, while the rest disperse the crowd of onlookers. In the chaos, Mo Yi escapes, although Zhu Lei has soldiers watching all the exits, so it's only a matter of time till they find her. Which is right now, because at the beginning of the next section, Zhuo Lei and Leslie are jumping Mo Yi. There is no smarter enemy placement in Yan. We are jumping you. Thanks to the power of not giving someone the fate of a 1v1, Mo Yi is swiftly defeated, although the old Tianxi, the ageless of Yan, saves her from being cooked by Leslie's arts. Mo Yi came to Mangshan to put a stop to a possible war with the Farenmut. To do so, she required access to Yi's Garden of Grotesqueries, which he was less than willing to provide. What she sought was a relic left behind by the dead Sui Jie. You can imagine why he would not want to part with such a thing. Regardless, Liang returns to the group at this point and requests their aid with performing Sui placating rites. Due to Wang entering the tomb of Sui, the regulators have been unable to perform the rites this year, and Yi has come up with a solution, but he needs some help. The old Tianxi recognizes that Mo Yi will be a hindrance and takes her away, allowing Zhuo Lei, Leslie, and Record Keeper to follow Liang into the Garden of Grotesqueries, where Yi awaits them. And it is here where the story of Fantasy Within the Mirage ends. This is the Integrated Strategy 6 setup after all, so of course it ends right as they enter Integrated Strategy 6's domain. Which is rather unfortunate, because it does kind of mean, hey, this event is kind of over without a really solid conclusion. Go read Integrated Strategies. I mean, as much as you can read Integrated Strategies, you know. As much as I like the event, it does have its problems with conveying a story, i.e. it does not just tell you a story, you have to extrapolate from context clues. You have to use the Dark Souls method of, you know, piecing together a story. I am calling Integrated Strategies the Dark Souls of Arknights. You're gonna have to deal with that mental image yourself. Setting that aside though, I overall really enjoyed this event. Was it the best thing ever? No, but it was a very solid setup, and I did enjoy Lazy as our protagonist. One of my big complaints about this event would be how disjointed it feels, especially with how there's only 7 different story segments, and they spend 2 of them essentially not pushing the plot forward at all. Yes, I enjoyed the old man and Yi's relationship, and I also enjoyed the whole end of the swordswoman delivering blades storyline. But that does come at the cost of completely derailing the flow of the story just to, you know, complete these stories. And that's not a bad thing, because, you know, these shorter story events, that's what they're made for. They're made to tell you these condensed versions of Arknights' usual stories, and for the most part, it did a good job. I enjoyed it. I would definitely like to have seen Yi introduced in his own dedicated Chinese New Year event, because the stuff we got from him was really interesting. Most of the Sui siblings are kind of not developing characters, they're already kind of done, and those characters that interact with them get to show us what the Sui siblings value. And in Yi's case, his interactions with the old man was fantastic. I want to see more of that, and the fact that we were kind of teased what it is, and we didn't get it for the entire event, kind of annoys me. I would have much preferred to have 7 individual stories of Yi interacting with different people, and how he treats their treasures, how they treat their treasures, and him building his garden, versus what we got. But what we got wasn't bad. I did enjoy it. I really like Leslie. Leslie, as someone who didn't like her particularly when she was introduced, she's grown on me massively. I think she's very interesting. I need her to give us more Yuri, but you know, that can always wait for another event. I don't really have strong feelings on the other characters that were in this event. They were all pretty passable and they performed their service pretty well. If I had to pick someone else to focus on, it would be Delivering Blade. Not because I found her particularly compelling, but because I really like her design. It's just kinda goated like that. Unfortunately, we are probably never gonna see her again. But we are probably going to see Mo Yi again, especially if they continue down this avoiding war with the fair and what line. We may see her in the next Chinese New Year event. But again, only time will tell, and it may just be as an NPC and not an operator. And with that all being said, it is time for me to bring this video to a close. I can't promise that you're going to see an IS-6 video from me next week or for the next while, but you may just see a different IS video in the next week or so. I will, however, not make any promises on that specific date. Shout out to the wonderful members of the factory. You are the very cool looking stone I found to my garden of grotesqueries. Y'all, be good people, and I will see you in the next one. I may be called a degenerate for this, but I would lick Lazy's armpits.